Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Welcome aboard Captain Fi, the Financial Independence Podcast. G'day! Welcome to an episode of Captain Fi, the Financial Independence Podcast, where I open the cockpit to some of the best and brightest in personal finance, as well as those who've reached or are on their way to financial independence. Good morning, welcome. Today I have with me Liz Raad, who has created financial freedom in her life, starting from zero and using a very unconventional method. She and her husband Matt are website investors, which means they use digital assets to generate their cash flow and build wealth. They were one of the first in the world to realize that they could actually buy websites, renovate them, just like real estate, and then decide to either keep them for cash flow or sell them for profit. I've asked Liz to share some of her insights into her journey as a successful female entrepreneur who started out as a zoologist and went on to raise a young family and have lots of great adventures on the way. So Liz, welcome to the show. How are you going?
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
So first up, I know I've spoken to you and Matt in the past, and I'm actually one of your students. But for the benefit of people who haven't come across yourself or Matt before, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, certainly. Like you said in the introduction, it's all a bit different now than where I started back. I do now live a life that I really only could dream of when I was a little girl in a farmhouse out in the middle of nowhere. Now we own a portfolio of websites. We basically invest in digital assets and generate wealth through those by using a strategy that we learned on the way, because we've been in business now for over 20 years and been together too, Matt and I, for over 20 years. And we're adventurers. We've always had a spirit of curiosity, and we've gone out there and always had a really strong long-term goal to create financial freedom. And that was something that saw us through our whole journey. So I grew up on a farm. We became scientists, which sounds really bizarre now. We loved it. We're very outdoors people. We love anything on two wheels. We love mountain biking. We love adventuring. We owned road bikes there at one time. So we've got a whole range of things that we've done in our lives. And now, like you said, have a young family and raise them throughout the whole process of generating that wealth and creating financial freedom in our lives.
Pretty incredible. One of the things that I look up to you the most is how you've been able to design a lifestyle rather than a business or approaching it from a wealth point of view. You really have designed a financially independent lifestyle. And for most of the people listening to the Captain Fi podcast, they're really interested in financial independence. We often hear this term FIRE or financial independence, retire early. Well, something that, like I said, I really admire is how you've been able to use your skills as an entrepreneur to generate that lifestyle without necessarily having to follow a conventional path of working as a professional, building up a huge sum of money and buying index funds. It just shows that there are many different ways to tackle this problem. And we were just talking before we jumped on air, and you guys have just come back from a pretty awesome little holiday. You've just sort of gone, no, I'm going to take a couple of weeks off and go off and have an adventure.
That's something that's really important to us, and very much part of our vision is we want to be able to make choices. So if someone says, and this is what happened in our group of people we hang around, most of them are retired, and they just said, oh, we're going to go down to the snowy mountains and we're going mountain biking. Do you want to come? And we just go, cool, yeah. So we took out a couple of weeks and went adventuring. And that was a big part of why we wanted to create what we created. But the thing is too, it's about not putting that stuff off. So one of our biggest learnings was in our journey. So initially, I think we started out like everyone, you're powering on. I was very impatient. I was like, come on, I want this to happen now. And you're working really hard. You think you got to do everything all at once. And I think the biggest learning I've had in our journey is that actually, and like you alluded to there, you don't have to do it like everybody else does. You can find your own way and create your own path. Stick true to your goals. It's actually about saying no a lot of the time more than yes. I think that's the key to one of the big keys to success, and one of our biggest learnings was, okay, we can do it our way. If we're strong and true to our vision, then we can create the life and the journey too, because that you brought that up too. One of my big things was I did not want to be a baked beans millionaire where you got to live on baked beans for 10 years before you finally crack it. That wasn't my idea of fun. So we've had fun the whole way because we have always scheduled time for fun. And you know what? I think actually that's something you really got to practice. You got to schedule in time for fun.
I'm hearing you loud and clear, Liz, and I'm trying to do that for my own journey. I definitely am guilty of wanting to do everything all the time. So that's some very, very wise words. And, you know, I know it might be rude or a bit of a faux pas to be discussing numbers here, but I would just say for the benefit of the audience, Liz is the real deal in terms of starting from nothing and building a business with, is it a 7-figure income? So yeah, it can be done. And that's why I appreciate you making time to actually speak about your journey today. For some people that might think, oh, well, that's unachievable. Well, no, it isn't, because Liz started with literally nothing. And as I said earlier, I am learning from Liz and her husband, Matt, and they're helping me to build some of my online businesses as well. Definitely a very interesting topic. On the topic of business, you started out as a zoologist. Why did you start your business, and why did you give up on being such a successful professional? You guys were studying doctorates. You were leaders in your field.
Yeah, and we loved it. It was awesome. But we looked into the future. I'm sure, like many of your listeners found, you look into the future and you think, is this actually going to get me to where I want to be in life in the future? And zoology is great and it's fun and it's such an adventure, but there's not a lot of money in that field. And we could see the people around us, the people ahead of us, 10 years ahead of us or 20 years ahead of us, still struggling for money. And that's not what we wanted, because the other thing too is we thought, well, we can help the world a whole lot more if we have a whole lot of money. We can be funding these projects. We can be working on these projects and helping the world in a far bigger way than if we are always scrimping and scraping and trying to survive. And I think that's part of it. So we decided we're going to do something different. And an opportunity came up. There's this little business that we came across for sale. So there's this little business that we found for sale, and we got advice. We went to an accountant and asked him, okay, is this business okay? Is this valuation okay? And yes, he was all very positive. And yep, so we went ahead with a bit of money we'd scrimped together. Matt actually had a redundancy payout that he'd had from before he went into the zoology. So we scrimped and pulled together with family. We got in there and we bought that business. When we bought it, we realized a few months after being in there that it was going out of business. We've either made a really big mistake or this is an opportunity. We took it as an opportunity to grow. We knew we had to. We had no other option. We were in now, and so we had to learn about business. Matt did accounting courses. We did sales courses. We did everything we could to turn this business around. That was our first experience, but we loved it. What it felt like was we were in control. The things that we did in that business had effects. The more we learned and the more effective we were in that business, the better it got. That little tiny business, we ended up exporting our products to Germany and all around the world. We totally turned that business around. And that was something I think straight away we learned, okay, we like being in control of our future and our finances. And with a business, we have that control. We don't have to go cap in hand to a boss or whatever and play rules about what we need to do to be able to get a raise. We saw actually far more freedom in a business because we could design it to suit our hours. So even through that time when we were working pretty hard, we still had a ball. Even though we didn't have a huge amount of money to start with, we were still out riding, doing our adventures, traveling and doing things. We did it on a budget.
So it's like you said earlier, you really wanted to build a lifestyle rather than just a career or a life.
Yeah, and we wanted to be in control of it. What we realized was the skills we were learning gave us huge control over these assets. These businesses were assets, and that's why we did it again. We thought, this is awesome. We set up that business. It was very much outsourced, so it didn't need a lot of time on it. And then we started buying and selling other businesses, buying and renovating. When we had enough money, we started buying properties and renovating them as well. We realized with business, you've just got so much leverage. So that's the direction we went.
The idea of being in control of your finances, of your future, I think that's very desirable and very appealing to a lot of the people who are interested in the FIRE movement. You're not at the mercy or the risk of losing your job, selling your time for money, and then you work 30 years for a company, and what happens at the end, it's like, oh, thanks very much, see you later. Hope your super fund was invested. Whereas having your business means you have much more control over your destiny. So that's fantastic. I think a great answer for why you started your business. So you said you'd started it quite early when you were young, and you've since had a family. What are some of the implications of running a business and trying to raise a family at the same time? Have you come into many struggles?
I think everybody does. Anyone who's an entrepreneur and has a family, when you have a family, kids are random. Kids are unpredictable. Suddenly your life is, turned upside down by this little being that you love and care for, and suddenly your attention is divided. I think a lot of people step up. When they have a family, they realize, okay, I'm responsible for someone now. And I think it gives you even added motivation to create that financial freedom and the ability to have choice. So by the time we had a family, that was just at the point where the internet was starting to take off. And it was moving beyond I don't know how many of you probably even remember this, but you used to have a modem that and squeaked, and you could barely download one image. So it was moving beyond there.
I remember trying to pick up the phone and you'd hear that horrendous sort of cyber voice with the dial-up.
Yeah. So that's when we started our internet journey. We were doing this with businesses, but obviously it was the two of us, and we had unlimited time and the ability to work whenever we wanted because it's just the two of us. But once you have a family on board, it throws in a whole lot of different challenges because you now have a timetable. If the baby needs to sleep, or if the baby needs things, or if the kids are awake, basically, there can be mayhem. So that's when we started getting online. That was one of the big motivators for getting online, because we thought, okay, well, can we do this? What we've been doing is buying and renovating these assets. Can we do this in an online space? And we also were looking at, okay, can we do this and not have interaction with people? Because that's the other element. So here we originally owned business, in offline business. We're talking to people all the time. There's a lot of networking, a lot of time taken up with that. And online, suddenly we had the ability to reach a worldwide market and not even have to talk to anyone on a daily basis. And we're going, okay, that's leverage. I actually started out by building a couple of sites, and I thought, me being impatient, I was just going, oh, can we just bypass all the building stuff and just buy one? And that's when we started looking. And originally we were looking on, sites like eBay, and Flipper didn't exist. There was SitePoint, which was just like a forum. And we just started looking around and connecting with people and finding assets that way. That's when we started. Again, what I had to do was very much set boundaries. So say, okay, well, there's family time and there's some work time, and being able to still have those long-term goals, but be okay with the journey perhaps taking a little bit longer sometimes, or being disrupted. So it was very much about knowing the long game, being really happy with even achieving small things in a day, and just revising that expectation.
Interesting. I'm hearing a lot of similarities from what you're saying to in the FIRE community. We talk about get rich slow. And again, you touched on it at the start, which was you don't need to be constantly doing things, and Rome wasn't built in a day, so to speak. It's a really important reflection that if you are going to have a family and juggle that with business, that maybe be reasonable about your expectations for what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think so. And because it is an incredible time and you want to be in a mindset where you have got time for them. They're a big part of your life. What happens in those first few years is important for their growth and development as well. If you can set those boundaries and just be okay with expectations and accept that for maybe a few years, the journey won't potentially run as fast as you think it will. But it constantly amazes me how much you can actually get done as long as you focus on something we call the MRAs, the maximum return activity. So it's not just about getting a whole lot of stuff done. It's actually just being really clear about, okay, well, if I only got one thing done today, what would make the most impact towards my journey? And sometimes that's the scariest thing. You put that off. But if you can discipline yourself to just go for the MRAs each day, your progress is actually faster than if you mess around and look busy doing a whole lot of little bits and pieces.
I've seen people like that they carry a clipboard or a beige envelope and walk around the office looking busy, and it's just FaceTime or busy work. But concentrating on the MRAs is something that I'm trying to learn when it comes to digital business as well. So that's fantastic advice. Speaking of raising a family and being a mum, when you were working in the corporate world, you talked about you had to do a lot of networking and a lot of business meetings. Did you face any particular challenges or come across any discrimination as a result of either your gender or being a mum?
I know it is a very common thing. I think my pure, I don't know what the word is. I always just assumed I was as good as any guy. So I would walk into a meeting and look them straight in the eye and speak to them as if there was no difference. I rarely found someone who excluded me or looked down at me because I was knowledgeable. I knew my stuff and I felt like I had value to add or to bring. And on the rare occasion that there was someone who obviously was kind of looking down their nose and trying to exclude me or things like that, I'd just be like, meh, you're not part of my world anymore. It's kind of like that energy of, well, if you don't want to hear it from me, then whatever. I'm not working with you then. I think I always had that attitude of, and I know in the corporate world, sometimes I think you're trapped. I think this is the other thing too in business. I had the choice. Well, if that person isn't going to work with me because I'm female, then you miss out, dude. Kind of attitude. Whereas I know in the corporate world, sometimes maybe that doesn't work. What's your thoughts?
I love it, Liz. I love the fact that being a business owner gave the power back to you to be able to control those situations and those dynamics. And I think knowing your value and your worth is so important.
I think that there always is that. I think there always will be sometimes that imbalance and sometimes that kind of attitude with some people. It's interesting because I actually heard an interview with Julie Bishop not long ago. And she's a pretty amazing lady. Here she is at the top of her game in politics. And even she says she'll be in a room where something's being discussed and she'll come up with an idea and it will be ignored. And then some bloke will come up with the idea and everyone will go, oh, yeah, that's good. And she'll be going, hang on, what the heck? So I do know it does happen. I think the main thing is it's about speaking up and saying, hang on, I just said that, and being able to get that point across that, yes, you have value and it must be respected.
Yeah, I love it. Just walk in there, head up, look them in the eyes and lay down the law. That's great, Liz.
I sound all dragon lady now, but I did it with a smile. Interestingly, I've coached a lot of women now over the years who are in those corporate roles. Invariably, when I say to them, look, you have a value, it must be respected, go in with that attitude. One of two things happen. Either in the corporate environment, I've had several women who have gone to their boss and said, hang on, no, that's not my job. Like they're being asked to do way too much. And they've said, hang on, that's not my job. There's one of two responses. Either the boss says, well, you're not a team player, go. Or the boss says, oh, okay, righto, let's rework that. And if the boss says, obviously you're not part of this team kind of thing, invariably that woman that I've said that to, she's left and found a better job, better paid, better hours, and with a respectful corporate environment, just because she stepped up and said, hey, I'm not going to put up with that anymore. I think that is very powerful. I think the relevance to everyone here now on this is when you stand up in life and say, hey, this is what I want, and I'm not going to accept anything less. That's what starts coming into your life. Yeah, it's interesting. Like,
I've seen in aviation, when it comes to pilots that have families, both male and female, there is this tendency to almost discriminate against the parents, because there's a perception that someone who's single and who doesn't have kids with no responsibilities at home, they're going to be more of that team player. They're going to work harder. What would be your advice to parents or new parents that might be facing discrimination by the fact that they have a young family?
I must admit, I'm of the opinion, well, if it's really important to you to have time for your family, you need to reassess, is this the right workplace for me? Because I'm assuming that's a lot of what's driving you to say, all right, I want to take control of my future. I'm going to create a business or do something else that generates income so that I don't have to put up with that. Because some corporate environments are like that, and they will preference those people. And you've got to decide, well, do I want to be part of that environment or not? And sometimes you can't change the environment. You can change you and you were willing to do or put up with or handle. And sometimes actually walking away, not that I want to tell everyone to walk away from their job, but maybe that's the intention in the end, and that's why you're doing this, is because you're standing up and saying, hey, I'm not going to put up with that. If they don't want to provide an environment that I can work with, then this is not an environment I want to be part of.
I love it. And having a strong financial foundation, and as it's sort of affectionately referred to as FU money, or a big emergency fund, I think that helps people with having the confidence to maybe stand up for themselves in that situation.
Definitely. And so if you're in that situation at the moment and you don't have that backstop, so you have to put up with a bit of this for the moment, this is where, again, the long-term vision is really important. So you go, okay, well, I know this is going to change because I'm saving up right now. I'm doing stuff and I'm taking steps so that I won't have to put up with this for the rest of my life. So I can handle it for now, because there's also that level of acceptance. If you're in a situation, even if it sucks, and this has happened to us many times through our journey, there's been times when business is hard and things have gone wrong and things aren't working the way we want. It's at those moments when you fall back on that long-term vision and say, okay, well, I'm still heading in that direction. Yes, I'm off on a little bit of attack at the moment. It's not quite right, but I know I'm putting in place and making decisions every day that is building something that is going to get me back to where I actually want to be in the long term. So there is that level of, okay, I accept things aren't quite how I want them right now, but in my heart, I know my value. I know where I'm heading. And I'm going to set stuff up now. Every day I'm going to do little things to make sure I'm on that path. So that'll give you a sense of security and confidence as well.
So on the topic of websites and being a parent, because you've obviously created quite a lot and you have a lot of experience across a broad spectrum of digital properties, do you find that there are any particular style of websites that might be well suited to individuals? Like, are there websites that are best for mums to run? Would there be some that are best for dads or best suited for females?
Okay. I think, well, certainly our strategy has always been the leveraged style websites. So the sort of websites that we buy for it to be, for a sale to be made or for it to make money. So we don't do e-commerce. We don't hold any stock, or I don't want to deal with customers and returns and all that sort of stuff. So we purposely, when we got into the online space, we purposely chose businesses that were leveraged, so that all we need to do is basically, for all our websites, we just need to add content, provide great content, give people a good user experience, make sure they're answering their questions, solving their problems, providing a really good experience. And then we get paid by either advertising or by selling an information product or a membership or something like that, or by selling other people's products. So referring them on to a business that does do those products and getting paid a commission or referral payment if they go and buy something. That guided our whole choice of every website we buy has to fit into that mold, so that we're buying ourselves not a job, but buying ourselves an investment and a leveraged income. In terms of who, like, a lot of women are very good on social. So if you have specific talents or passions, you love communicating with people maybe via social, you may have an element where you'd buy a website that perhaps had a social media element to it, maybe some social media followings and things that you could build up. And that may be your superpower. Everybody has a superpower, something that they're really good at or really love doing. And that can mean that your acceleration and renovation of that asset is even faster or bigger because you love it. So you can buy websites that are in particular topics too. So if you love a particular topic, you can have that. But sometimes that's a danger because it draws you in and you get too involved in it. We have websites that are all different topics, from cars to pigeon racing to everything. Like we've got product sites, we've got, it doesn't matter. And a lot of them, I have no idea much about the topic because we have outsourcers who run them. But there are some that we favour, that we are little favourites that we love the topic too. Yeah, and also
interesting. Now I'm starting myself about half a dozen sites, and I can relate because I've got one or two that I really like. Hint, hint, one of them's probably Captain Fi. I probably spend far too much time writing, but I'm learning to outsource, as you mentioned. So that's a really good summary, because it doesn't mean that you need to pigeonhole yourself into a certain type of website, which means that there's no particular website that's best suited for anyone. And it really comes down to organizational and management skills with the outsourcers.
So definitely at the beginning, when you're picking a website to buy or build, thinking about the structure of how that's going to make money and how it's going to generate its traffic, so that is automatable.
So that's that long-term focus again. Everything I'm noticing, that word keeps coming up, the long-term focus.
Always thinking about, okay, what do I want? What is it I actually want in life? And whenever I do a coaching with people, the first question I'll always ask is, okay, where are we heading? What's the goal here? Because I can't give you advice until I know where you want to go, because where you want to go might be different to where I want to go, or where I think you should go. So it is about, okay, where do you want to go? And let's set it up based on that.
So speaking of coaching and where people want to go, back at the start of your career, right when you were leaving your profession as a scientist, where did you want to go? And is there anything you wished you knew before you began that transformation? Like, what would you coach yourself if you could have a conversation with your younger self?
Had a life of freedom, really. When we were young, I grew up on a farm, and I just would have adventures all day. I'd be off down in the river, riding our bikes somewhere, doing stuff like just learning about the world. And I loved that sense of freedom. And we had that through when we did our degree. We were working on a field station out in far western New South Wales, and they just gave us stuff and said, off you go. And we loved that sense of freedom. So that was a really big part of our vision, was that we still had that freedom to do the things that we wanted to do, organize our time how we wanted. We didn't want to show up in an office from X hour to this hour. That was a big part of our vision. And the other part was that we wanted to be able to have the ability to choose, do we work or do we not work? If we love it, yay. If we don't, we can move on. To have that sense of power over our lives, to say if we don't like something, we can say, well, we don't want to do that anymore, and we can stop. So that was a very big driving force. The thing I guess I'd say to my younger self is just remember to stay focused. You don't have to do everything. So I know when we first started, we were just into everything, and it's very easy to get distracted. Admittedly, you have to learn stuff, and that was part of our journey. I think there was times when there were so many opportunities and I wanted to say yes to all of them. And there were times when we spread ourselves a bit thin because we were trying to do everything and get it all done and have it all happen straight away. I think I'd say just relax, focus, keep doing just the important things each day, and you'll get there. I know Matt was very much more grounded than me. I'm the hypo one. And he often was saying to me, just relax.
That's fantastic. So you're a bit of a content machine, Liz.
Yes, I'm the, let's do it. Go, go, go. Yes.
I'm definitely vibing with you because I do that as well. And maybe I need to go and find the equivalent of Matt to keep me a bit more grounded.
Yes. I'll say it to you now. Just relax. It'll come. Just focus on your MRAs. Maximum return activities.
MRAs, exactly. With that in mind, what advice would you offer to someone who's wanting to start a career in digital media?
I think the first step is always education, like understanding the marketplace and getting a good picture of, okay, what's here, what are the options, and what best suits me in what I want to achieve. So you need to learn some stuff. Now, whether that's through an organization like one of ours, where we obviously train people in a specific strategy with a very clear sort of focus and step-by-step pathway. The other thing, though, you can do is, of course, get out there on the web and find out, how are all these people doing this? Like, what are the different ways people have created this in their life? And you'll find different solutions. You'll find one that really resonates with you. And you'll think, oh, I love how they did that. In the end, your pathway or your strategy might be a combination of a few different things that you've learned from different people. But getting that foundation, there's a few things that you really need. Those foundations, like learning how to build a website. If you want to get into digital, you need to know how a website works, and you need your basic marketing as well. Because I see so many people who have fantastic ideas and concepts, then they know how to create it technically. But my first is always, well, how are people going to find out about this? How are you going to reach your market? And most people stumble on that. That's the big thing that holds them back. So understanding marketing and how to reach people in this digital world is step number one.
Do you recommend people undertake some kind of formal marketing training, or is it something that you can learn on the job?
Good question. Well, certainly there is like university-based and formal education. My experience is that a lot of that, we've got marketing graduates and IT graduates and things come to us, and they often say, I never learned this bit of it, the practical stuff. So I think one of the dangers of the kind of university education is that it is quite conceptual and broad by the sounds of it. Now, I'm only talking from experience from hearing people's experiences. So I don't want to say don't go out and get formal education, because I think for some careers and some people that is an important pathway. It does take a long time though. If you can get specific training on specific strategies or channels, I think that's much more focused. It's much more effective. And you can learn a lot on the job as well. But I certainly think having some strong foundations in certain skills will help you a lot.
One of the things that I certainly picked up from you, Liz, was that it's good to have a bit of an overview, and that's going to help outsourcing correctly. And I get this picture of Elon Musk, where obviously he's a very successful business person, and he's got these amazing companies, and he knows enough to hire the specialists. So if these websites really take off, you end up paying someone who's gone to university and got a degree, and then they work for you, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so you want the strategy and the bigger picture, you're right, very much, is so important. And that's the other thing too, to really jump up to success, and something I've noticed in working with people for quite a few years now, is the success really comes when you do jump that mindset up and you become the leader rather than working in the trenches. Once you can do that, once you can have that broader perspective and have your bigger picture goal and think, okay, how can people help me achieve this? That's when you get a whole lot more leverage, and it'll suddenly accelerate for you, is when you can have your team doing a lot of that work for you. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, and you can just then be focusing on the creativity, management, organizational structure and the ideas, and that can facilitate it from actually happening. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Hey, Liz, it wouldn't be the Captain Fi Financial Independence podcast if we didn't at least touch on investing a little bit. So we all know you're big investors in websites and digital media, But what about other forms of investing? Do you have any other forms of personal investing preference?
Yeah. So our big picture strategy is we want to buy an asset and add value to it. We've done quite a few properties. I don't know how many, when we were young, there's that many kitchens and bathrooms and walls and things painted. And so we've done flipping of properties, buy and renovate and sell properties. And that was, again, informed very much an inspiration for what we do online now, buy, renovate and sell. There's a lot of growth in the tech market. So we're focused on investing in companies that are foundational to the tech growth. We say we invest in digital real estate. So we invest in companies that are creating the digital real estate for the future. We invest in cybersecurity. We invest in data storage. We invest in gaming companies, like the platforms. So I don't know if you talk about in your group about the coming of the Web3 and the metaverse, and then looking at non-fungible tokens and the rise of crypto. So we're investing in the platforms that are making that happen. So rather than the end result, like the games and all the front end stuff, we tend to invest in the stuff that is, it's like that old analogy. If you want to make money in a gold rush, don't dig for gold, it's just sell shovels. We're investing in the shovel sellers.
Wow, that's interesting. So I guess I've had a very basic understanding of investing myself, and I basically just look at ETFs and market cap index funds. I've personally been burnt a few times with individual stock picking, but it sounds like you go into quite a detailed analysis before you invest in a particular company.
Oh, yes, definitely. So remember, that's our skill, valuation of an asset. So we have a whole process of valuing those businesses before, and then it's a combination. So both fundamental and technical trading, looking at the fundamentals of a company and then looking at the technical side, the charting, to see when to actually buy. If that makes sense.
Wow, it's giving me anxiety just listening to that.
Also invest in a lot of just ETFs. You don't have to be a full-on trader to invest in this marketplace. You can invest in those index funds that relate to tech companies or those growth stocks. Now, admittedly, we're looking at growth there. Depending on where you're at in your journey, you might be looking more at dividends or returns rather than growth. That's another really important part of understanding this kind of investing journey is you invest. Again, this is about your goals again, about, okay, well, what is my purpose at the moment for investing in these shares? Am I going for growth or am I going for income? And that changes over time as well.
Okay, so what about other asset classes? Are you still, for example, actively investing in property? You talked about the back end with crypto, but what about the front end? Do you personally invest in cryptocurrencies or NFTs, or what other sort of asset classes are you interested in?
I'm looking into crypto at the moment. Now, obviously, it's very volatile at this point, but I think there is phenomenal growth going to happen in that marketplace. We're excited about that because also with your crypto and with your non-fungible tokens and all that sort of thing coming on board, that pretty much proves to the world that digital assets are real, which is what we've been trying to tell people for the last 10 years, but they don't want to believe it because they're a bit frightened of this online world. I think this is going to be a great thing for website valuations and online business valuations, because I think people are going to get more used to the idea that digital assets are real, they have value, they can be traded, you can add value to them. Probably not going to invest in a huge, might change my mind later, but at the moment, not a huge amount of crypto, only because it's kind of a strap in for the ride type investment. I can't add value to crypto. If I buy a heap of Bitcoin, I just got to go with the flow. The same as investing in gold. So we invest in gold, and I sort of see crypto in a similar way in that, okay, well, I can buy it, but there's nothing I can do to add value to it. That's why at this stage, we're not heavily invested in crypto, the actual front end.
I think a fantastic summary is that you want to invest in things that you can add value to.
And, there's a lot of FOMO at the moment because obviously crypto, we've got people who bought Bitcoin for $2. Yeah, not $2, but a few $100s, and they're now multi-billionaires because they've ridden a trend. But I think that's kind of like looking at people who've won the lottery. A lot of them got lucky. A lot of them, it was smart. Obviously, that a lot of people saw this coming and good on them, but that's just not my strategy. So you've got to be careful of not feeling, oh, I missed out. I better get in now, because you've got to always make those decisions based on what your strategy is and where you're at.
Yeah, that's great advice. Don't let the FOMO trick you into being, fearful or greedy, and think of that long-term focus and don't be tricked into making any investments. So we've covered a few, but if you could summarize some of your experience into 3 tips, what would you say for someone who is on their path to financial independence?
We've said it so much, I don't even know if it counts anymore, but you've got to have your long-term vision. You have to have that picture in your mind of what you're creating. And that's got to be strong enough that you always go back to it. Every decision you make is based on, is that taking me towards that vision? Does this fit? I think the second biggest thing is valuing your time, being able to set those boundaries and step up and say, okay, well, what am I willing to put up with and what am I not willing to put up with? And what am I worth? What's my time worth? That sort of follows in with that, okay, focusing on those maximum return activities. If you're going to spend time working at something, do the good stuff. Don't mess around with little stuff. Do the stuff that matters. I think the third thing that's really important for me, if I've noticed for myself and for a lot of people I've coached over the years, is recognizing your progress and understanding and really knowing that small steps count. We often say this 1 push-up a day idea. It sounds ridiculous. If someone said to you, okay, to get fit, all you have to do is 1 push-up a day, it sort of feels ridiculous. You think, oh, that's not even worth doing. Like, why would I do 1 push-up a day? That's not going to make any difference. But I guarantee if you actually made that commitment and said, I'm going to do 1 push-up a day, you will start by doing 1 push-up and you probably feel a bit silly doing it, and it'll probably feel uncomfortable. You think, oh, this is silly. But gradually you'll get in the habit of 1 push-up a day. And maybe while you're there one day, you'll actually do 2 or 3 or 4, 5 or 6. Or actually one of our students just got back to me. He's 60. He's now doing 50 a day. He started with 1. And I think understanding that those small steps, those little things that you're doing, it affects you in so many ways. It's not just that you're making progress, but it's also that you're telling yourself, I'm going to do this. And when you follow through, your confidence and your valuation of yourself increases. And it's like a spiral upwards. We always draw our curve. I don't know if anybody knows what an exponential curve looks like, but at the beginning of the journey, it always feels pretty flat. All those little things that you're doing, each little micro thing is actually raising your line, raising your curve. You might not notice it to start with. Then suddenly in a year's time or 2 years' time or whenever it is, feel this incredible snowball effect. Warren Buffett says that snowball effect, suddenly it all comes together and boom, you go, wow, overnight success.
Long-term focus, and it's that commitment to just keep working at it bit by bit.
And knowing that counts. Everything you do counts.
Liz, how did you get to know all this stuff? Who have been the most influential people on your journey, or some of the experiences you've had or books that you've read on your journey to financial independence that have made you who you are today?
I think one of the main ones is Matt, my husband. He has such a strong vision and I learned a lot from him. He kind of introduced me to the world of reading books and reading and, learning this kind of thing and actually setting goals, because that's not something I did. As when I was a kid, I was very sort of, life will take me where it'll take me. So I learned that a lot from Matt. But when we got into our first business, the massive influence, because we needed to learn how to sell. And so a massive influence is a sales trainer, Tom Hopkins, who was such a gentleman and such a happy guy. Tom Hopkins and Zig Ziglar, we had lots of laughs and learned so much from those guys. And if you want to learn to sell, they're a bit old now. They're back from the 80s, but it's still awesome stuff. Tony Robbins was a big change in our lives. We did the Walk on Fire, and I think he's got some really good stuff. But of course, I think the other thing too is to really be conscious of, and something that you can do for yourself. I believe in that adage that you are the average of the 5 closest people to you. So that's something that was very important in my journey, surrounding myself with people who were supportive and who were a step ahead of me. So we have mentors around us who are multi-millionaires in the tens or even hundreds. We've actually got a billionaire friend, and it's really good to be with those people because it changes your expectations. It makes you realize what's possible. And I think if you can surround yourself with people, you don't have to start out with a billionaire. You can start out with just someone who's positive, and like this community, this is perfect.
That's fantastic. I'll make sure to put all of those in the show notes so that anyone who's listening can jump onto the website and have a look, and then link to some of the books that Liz has pointed out. I totally agree with you, Liz. I think if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. That's certainly what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to hang around with people that I can learn from. I really thank you for all of the advice that you've been able to give us today. For people that are listening, might want to get to know you more or learn a little bit more about digital assets, where can people find more information about you and your company?
You can head over to ebusinessinstitute.com.au. I think you can probably put in a link there for us to make it easy. Over there, you can find out what we do. You can have a look at our strategy, how we do it and how we've done it. And there's some free training there too. So you can really get a good idea of what's possible, I think, in this digital market. That's the first step. Open your mind to what's possible and see if that path will suit your end goals.
Again, end goals, long-term focus. Yeah, if anyone wants to check that out, I'll have all the links in the show notes. And as well, feel free to shoot me a line either through the website, email, or on the socials, and I can tell you a bit about my experience as a student, Liz and Matt's. So again, Liz, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate you coming on to the show to have a bit of a chat about your journey. I feel like I've learned a lot of really good stuff from you, and I'm sure that the listeners have definitely come away with hopefully a bit of a spark that might have been lit, and maybe a little bit more curiosity about other ways that they can go about reaching their long-term goals of becoming financially independent. So again, thank you very much, and I hope that you're going to enjoy your next adventure very soon.
Oh, I certainly will. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Captain Fi Financial Independence Podcast. To read the transcripts or check out the show notes, head over to www.captainfi.com for all the details. If you have a question for the captain, make sure to get in touch. You might even make it on the airwaves. You can reach me online through the Captain Fi contact form or get in touch through the socials. I'm active on Facebook and Instagram, as well as a number of online finance and investing forums. And finally, remember, the information presented on the show and the links provided are for general information purposes only. They should not be taken as constituting professional financial advice. You should always do your own research when making any financial decisions and make sure it's appropriate for your personal circumstance.